We're live.
Thank you, Jason. Welcome everyone to the City of Hendersonville's Finance Committee for February 21st. I'm going to get my tongue untied, 2023. I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'd like to welcome two new members. We had some reorganization this month, and we have Alderman Bergdorf, thank you, welcome, and Alderman Sassy. Joining us today is Mayor Jamie Clary. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you.
And Jesse Eckenroth, our Chief Operating Officer. Tamara Ingersoll will be in here shortly. She is our Assistant Finance Director. I want to look at approving the minutes from last week. However, since you were not a formal member and you were not here, I have looked over the minutes and I agree that they're accurate. And so we will not be taking a vote on that unless
I actually have an amendment to the minutes.
Oh, you do?
Yes, because it does list me as a member on the minutes.
Oh,
And
yes.
so that means
You're right.
remove this me on the minutes,
Right.
and every vote needs to be changed from 2 to 0, or just make it unanimous.
Very good. Thank you for catching that. So I'll make that amendment and we'll get those changes made. Thank you. So we have no ordinances and resolutions, but I want to talk about the rest of our agenda for today. I'd like to make an amendment to move up number 9, appoint a vice chair. And since we are going to vote on that and the rest of these items, it's likely there's going to be no vote because it's mostly for discussion.
Okay.
So I'd like to move that up to thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So the first thing that we'll do is appoint a vice chair. Is there any other changes to our agenda?
Yes, I would like to add, before we discuss sales tax, I'd like to discuss. Well, let's wait until she's back in here, but she's gonna bring in some documents to demonstrate where our status on our debt.
Yes.
So
I was thinking we could put that under other business, but do you want to? Yeah, it's under number 10. Can we do that?
Yep.
All right. So under other business, we'll discuss our debt services and analysis that the finance department has run for us. Okay. Anything else? Can I get a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Motion. I motion it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we're going to accept the amended agenda. Do I have to do that? Do another vote? Well, as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, so I guess we'll turn it over. Jesse, are you ready to talk? Or were you going to give Tamara the pleasure of going through?
Sure, no, I can go through the sales tax update. So it's
Jeff doesn't have a package.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Well, I have it here.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
so page 4 has the local sales tax analysis. This isn't the state portion, but the state portion is very similar to the local, and that is doing very well. So if you look at the far left column, it has fiscal year 21, and then there's fiscal year 22 next to it. And then in the box, we have obviously this fiscal year 23. And we are showing a substantial increase over last year's on a month-to-month basis. There's a substantial increase this year on all months of the year so far. We will get in January, probably at the tail end of February. Usually we have them ready for these meetings, but we're about a week early, so I don't think we have all that data in yet. But every month we've had increase compared to the prior fiscal year. So very good report. As you know, we just increased the mid-year budget with an expected uptick of almost, I think, $2 million in sales tax. So this report reflects that. It calculates a projected percentage over budget. So without passing the mid-year amendment, it's projecting about 2.3 million above where we initially began the budget. So very good report.
Is that
Good
just
news.
for the second half of the year, or is that 2.3 million for the entire year?
That'd be for the entire year.
Okay, still very, very positive.
Yeah, I think this year, the changeover fiscal year 22, if I'm reading this correctly, is 824,000 at this point. So we're much better. And we budgeted a little bit less than we collected last year because the gains were
Okay.
so large last year.
Next question, yeah.
We budgeted a little bit less. We thought, man, was that just really a
A fluke.
bumper
yeah.
year?
Right.
And this went up so high compared to the previous year.
Yeah,
And it hadn't done that in the past. And then this year again, it's doing the same thing where it's going substantially above the prior year, which was substantial.
Yeah.
The prior year before that.
well, I would just like to encourage people to continue shopping local.
So a very good report on local sales tax.
Great.
If we jump over to hotel motel occupancy tax, that's it's not a large amount of revenue. The revenue collections aren't quite as consistent. Looks like we have some reporting periods that aren't super clean, but overall, we
Yeah.
still have an increase. I think of $12,000 where we were at this point last year. So we began with a balance of 232,000. And we're expecting to end the year at about $242,000. So
In January, we're not whole yet in this box, right? We're still, okay.
Well, we did see a large influx in December. Could that be offsetting by January?
it could be, it was a
Yeah,
substantial
the-
bump, but
There was 2 hotels in December that paid for month that they missed prior. So if you look
Yeah.
at, yeah,
October's really low.
October's really low.
So there-
I-
there was
Yeah.
2 hotels that paid in December for prior months that were late. So that's why there's that weird.
Great.
it's a
jump there.
substantial jump in
Mhm.
December.
Yeah,
So how much of January does this include?
it's only through the 15th. We actually only got one, there's only one payment in
Oh.
from one hotel in there. But I've been just updating it as they come before this meeting.
So we typically have four payments in one company, and one of them is for 2 hotels. Is that typically the
Mhm.
case? Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, we have 5, but the 5th one is very, very small.
Yeah, there was one, technically there was like $37 and some change and then a real one.
Okay.
So we got another one today, but it's not on here. It was like $9,500 or something came in today. It
Great.
was deposited today.
Are the extended stays and part of hotels? Do they pay hotel tax for extended stays?
We do, they're not apartments, they're hotels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, we'll talk about the creating a fund for hotel motel activity.
Sure. Yeah, so we currently don't have a fund for collecting and spending hotel motel funds. So those are dollars that come in that are restricted to spend on tourism generating activity. So we've kind of just said, okay, we collect X amount of dollars. Let's define a project that we think is worth X amount of dollars that's tourism related, and we'll just apply it towards that. Which it works okay. It just doesn't, it doesn't provide as much transparency as if we collected revenues in a fund and we expended revenues in a fund. So if we saw exactly where the dollars were coming out and exactly where the dollars are going out for a fund, it would just be a bit more transparent and probably easier for finance to track.
Yeah.
Probably for compliance purposes, it would make us more compliant to the intent of those tourism dollars. So those fees, when you stay at a hotel, are supposed to be for tourism generating activity.
So we're
Yeah.
required by law to do that, is that right?
Now, I don't know that there's a requirement by law to do it. But I think for practical matters for us, for being more transparent, it achieves that goal. For tracking, we've gone back to finance several times, said, hey, exactly where do we spend this money? And because it was spent out of the general fund,
Yeah.
because it's all collected in the general fund, all spent out of the general fund, but we're supposed to use a portion of it just for tourism related activity.
Okay,
So it just kind of makes sense. We've kind of treated it as its own department, but it just makes sense to me to finance kind of, we say, hey, this is its own fund. We collect revenues in there, we spend revenues out of there.
That
Can you
part,
identify, I'm sorry, go ahead.
that part is important. That part is by law. We have to spend on tourism related activity by law, but we don't have to have it a separate fund.
right. That was-
Tourism related activity is very vague.
That's what I was about to ask.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that could go towards roads, it could go towards parks.
And
right?
some cities do that.
Okay, so it's in this fund, do you want to identify things that are tourism related?
And who would make that determination?
So what we would vote on it, and at the beginning of the fiscal year, like we do the regular general fund
Mhm.
budget. So when we bring the general fund budget, we have those special revenue funds as well, like the stormwater fund and the drug fund. So if we added this as a fund, we'd have the stormwater fund, the drug fund, and the hotel motel fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
So it would go to BOMA, it would get approved through the budget process.
Does City of Hendersonville have a tourism board? No. There's not.
county.
County does.
Just the county. Okay, yeah.
And that's something that we've sort of talked about is should we have some organization making a recommendation for us for how this money should be spent? That organization might be a handful of aldermen and a handful of residents. It might be somebody representing the hotel industry. Or it could be the board of mayor and aldermen.
Is that something that we need to mull that over? I don't necessarily know that we need another committee. But
Well, it could be a citizens committee, but I think the purpose of this conversation is just to set up that account. That can be probably.
right,
discussed later.
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get in the weeds. Sorry. Thank
And
you.
maybe they could only need to meet once
so.
a year.
It's probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
there's people who know a whole lot more about tourism than I do.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I know nothing, so.
Yeah, I
it's
think
anyone.
overall, it would increase transparency and it would give BOMA and the general public a much clearer picture of where those funds are being spent.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Great.
And it's kind of like our parks department, it's kind of like park/recreation/tourism.
Mhm.
So this can kind of more appropriately put some of those events under like a tourism category.
Yeah, but I'd love to see that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, hotel fund sounds like a good
Sounds
plan.
good, yeah. I need to back up because I went right through and didn't call for a vote for our vice chair.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I totally skipped over it.
That's all right.
Well-
So let's go back to our original.
Well,
Okay.
I would like to nominate Mark, Mr. Bergdorf.
Great,
as
great. It
vice
needs
mayor.
no second, so would you like to say a few words? Were you willing to
Thank
take
you
that
for
on?
the opportunity to work with the finance committee to bring safety and security financially to the city. Thank you very much. Sounds good, right?
Before you vote, I should make you aware of the fact that by being vice mayor, by being vice chairman of this committee, you are also serving on the nonprofit appropriations committee.
I've already let them
Yeah.
both know. I'll send them a note about it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor for Mark Bergdorf being our vice chair? Say aye.
You, sorry,
Great.
you long pause there. I
Oh,
thought-
no. Now, Mark is now our vice chair. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And so now I'll kick it back over to Jesse to
Please.
talk about another fund for equipment purchase.
Yeah, so we have discussed this, we've touched on the topic a few times in public meetings. And the idea here with creating a fund for equipment is that our budget is more consistent and more stable. We have a rather substantial budget, but departments don't have a huge budget, so. For the fire department, they can take a 10% increase when they want to buy, a ladder truck, which is very expensive. And instead of absorbing that all in 1 year, it makes a lot of sense to get an equipment schedule, replacement equipment schedule, and then just budget every year. So if the total pool of vehicles is $10 million, we would, and the useful life is, for example, say 10 years, we would just say, hey, every year we're going to budget $1 million. And we'll take money from the general fund from the departments, we'll list it as an expense, we'll transfer it to an internal fund that we keep just to make those purchases. So that from a budget perspective, it's consistent. And that way too, when we get into lean years, when the revenue's down,
Mhm.
and then a purchase is coming due in one of those years where revenue's down, we have some money set aside to keep equipment fresh. And then the budget's more stable. So I think initially we're thinking, generally these are for these larger items, fire engines, SWAT vehicles for
So these for
PD.
public safety primarily, or,
Yeah, primarily that's what got the conversation started,
Yeah,
but we also have limb trucks in public works.
Right.
We have other equipment too, and those limb trucks, I think, are about, they're over $100,000 a piece, and we run 5 of them. Plus, I don't know, there's probably 30 or 40 vehicles out there in public works, the tractors. So some of those tractors are $100,000, $150,000. And that's tough when, maybe a year, the revenue is not quite as good, but we have 2 tractors and a limp truck that's due, and it's $500,000. Where if we can just budget 150 or 200,000 just year over year, and it's more consistent, and we have money set aside, it will help us be more consistent and then
So it
have
would,
the
in-
funds
would
to do that.
include city vehicles and parks, their golf carting and
That's-
that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's gonna be high dollar equipment or is it just gonna be everything?
Yeah, so I think, what I'm looking for today is if you guys think it's a good idea, is I'll put together some analysis on kind of the levels, the thresholds for the equipment. I mean, I think some of the smaller items, if they don't impact the budget too much, it's probably not worth amortizing a $15,000 golf
Yeah.
course over 10 years.
Mhm.
But an $80,000 truck,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, that's probably worth it,
Okay.
a $100,000 tractor,
Definitely.
$1 million fire engine, definitely.
Yep.
And I think even if we start with just larger items over time, I think as we get on schedules, we could eventually probably put all the city vehicles on a replacement schedule when we budget for it. So every year the codes department, would budget for 15 or 20,000 or whatever their needs are, rather than, 2 trucks coming due in 1 year and their budget jumping up 10% over what it was last year.
Who maintains our vehicles?
The departments do, so everyone who drives them kind of maintains them. The fire department takes care of their own, the police department takes care of theirs, public works theirs, but we don't have like a central mechanic shop where we take them all.
Is it all contract?
Most of it, not all of it, but a lot, most of it is.
If we're going to do, I firmly believe in this, because for obvious reasons, right? We want to plan ahead for those future big ticket expenditures. But in that, I would love to see a maintenance schedule as well, to make sure that we're maintaining our vehicles the best that we can. So maybe helping them to last, even if they're able to last an additional year, that's extends the life of everything across the board.
Is that something that would be held in each department? Or would that be something with the finance committee?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it would probably be a department specific based on the equipment needs, like. For the fire engines, there's pretty specific mechanics who work on those, so they use EVS, I think it's emergency vehicle specialist. Because otherwise, I think they avoid the warranty if it's not a emergency vehicle technician, right, working on those. So their maintenance schedules are gonna be a little different from, say, a limb truck. That we have that, we purchase.
It's 5,000 hours a year or something like
Yeah.
that.
We keep a spare one out there, so that would be probably a department by department
Mhm.
maintenance schedule. And we have some mechanics like Public Works, we have a mechanic in Public Works.
Okay.
In the Parks Department, we have a light equipment mechanic as well. Sometimes some of the PD does do their own oil changes.
Mhm.
But we have a contract with a local vendor where they do our oil changes too, so.
Perfect.
Our motorcycles are leased. So it's included in the lease, the maintenance on those, right?
Yeah, and so there's one where we kind of we partner and we have our guys actually install the lights, so they'll get the Harley. Our guys, our PD will strip them, install the lights, sirens, and they do that as a cost saving measure. But then when it comes to some of the engine maintenance, that's going to go in the shop for that.
Right.
So they're pretty versed in how their setup works with their lights and sirens. So they actually go out to Public Works, they go out, put all lights and sirens on themselves.
Now, looking at this, we got equipment purchases. Is this going to incorporate, like you were talking about your maintenance schedule? How about our maintenance facilities? Are they up to par? Do we need to improve those to accommodate?
That would probably be capital projects.
Is that what that is?
I would think.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's definitely a useful life for all those assets. I think generally, your buildings are going to be somewhere between 25 to 50 years.
I was thinking more or less tools and equipment inside,
Oh, okay,
because they're specialized tools, et cetera,
sure.
for
I
each
mean, I
machine.
would assume probably maybe there's a certain
Yeah.
minimum financial threshold that's required to be part of this. I don't know.
But
I'm
I'm
sure
sure
you'll
this
figure
is just,
all that
we're
out.
discussing that. Yeah.
Now,
So-
who gives the tune-ups to the horses? That's what I want.
We'll let you do that.
Oh, boy. Didn't know this was dirty jobs.
Got a long glove at the house.
Well, so what is your next steps on this, Jason?
So the reason I wanted to get some direction from the finance committee is because I didn't want to bring it as part of the mid-year budget and it looked totally new to everyone without
Got it.
getting the blessing from the finance committee that this is the direction you guys want to head in.
Yeah.
So
I
with this,
think it's,
go ahead.
I think it's fine. I do, I think. And you're mainly doing this for the write-off of the asset and right? I mean, that's
Right.
right, why you're
Yeah.
mainly wanting to do this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and also too, so when we hit those lean years, we don't have to say, oops, put the brakes on everything for 3 years, which
Yeah.
we've done before with PD vehicles, and then it puts us in the position where the year after and the year after, then now we're trying to play catch up, and it's a really big hit on the budget. So
Okay.
I think it helps from multiple perspectives.
So that's why it's important to me is that if we go without maintenance or we ever have to make cuts. Public safety is gonna get hit because that's so much a part of our budget.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make sure that we have police vehicles and we have fire engines. And this is a way to guarantee that even if we make cuts, we still have police vehicles and fire engines.
Yeah, and these are expenses we're going to have anyways, like you were
Exactly.
saying. We're just able to write it off over time, and I think it's very smart to do it that way, and I love the direction on with it. So, that's not something we need to vote on, right? We're just
No.
giving our blessing.
Right, yeah, it'll be part of the budget when we bring it, because every year we're probably gonna make some changes to how
In
the
June,
budget.
right?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay.
We'll start seeing that. We'll start seeing that. You guys will start seeing that probably in April.
Okay.
We'll vote on it. Maybe not till May, but we'll vote on it in June so that we have to vote on it before the end of June.
Yeah, okay,
But I don't want it to be a surprise. And obviously we want to put those things in there that you agree with.
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
okay,
Every year we'll probably have some changes. Doing it all at once at one time would be a lot. So we're going to implement some of these changes so that it's more transparent and maybe more forward thinking year over year.
Yeah, how much do you think we're gonna start off with on an annual basis, if you had to guess? I mean, I know in the presentation you said
Just
$1
the
million,
equipment?
but I know that was just a rough.
Yeah, I think it'll be around $1 million. You know, PDs year over year, they're buying about the same amount of vehicles every year.
Mhm.
So with them purchasing the same amount of vehicles every year, it'd be about the amount they contribute, because a lot of their vehicles are 5-year life. So for those, we'll probably continue just to make those part of the annual budget, because we're not really seeing the spike, because they have, if they have 100 vehicles they need to replace, we're replacing 20 every year. So we're not seeing the spike with them. With fire, we are, right? Because we'll have 2-3 years we go without buying one. All of a sudden, we have to do a ladder truck and engine the same year. So you see this huge spike.
Same with public works.
Yeah, so we'll kind of have to kind of chew through that and do the analysis, say, okay, which equipment is really needed? And we might have a piece or two from PD that we do, but like their normal patrol vehicles, probably not, because we're buying them year over year. So,
Yeah. Now, the establishing a criteria for budget amendments outside of the mid-year budget review. Is this, so this was brought up during our budget workshop. But I understood it to be establishing a criteria for the mid-year budget. In terms of no headcount increases, no large purchases that we weren't already prepared for. That's how I understood it, not for outside of the mid-year. Did I hear wrong?
maybe
me.
not. I put this in here as, I understood it as, I did hear that. I also heard, we should really stick to the mid-year. Like at the mid-year, we're looking at revenues, we're looking at expenditures, we can kind of see both and we can balance both. If we're doing these budget amendments outside of the mid-year, we don't really see the revenue. We don't know how well we're doing. There's a lot more effort that goes into the mid-year. So it seems to be more efficient to wrap them together.
Okay,
But I-
so it is both. Let's talk about them as both.
Yeah, that's what I figured we could talk about.
Because I started some bullet points and I was gonna send them to you. And then I noticed that you had put it on here, but I kept mine at during a mid-year review. This is our criteria we're expecting from the directors, and that's do not ask for more than a certain percentage. And I left that blank, and do not ask for any additional head counts and that sort of thing. So that's what I was looking for.
Okay. So we can probably just establish criteria for budget amendments as a whole.
Okay,
Part of them would apply to mid-year,
perfect.
and then part would apply to any. So I think there are instances where we should do budget amendments outside of mid-year.
Yes.
For example, we have a time sensitive grant, which you'll see where some are coming in where we get notified and we have a small window of time to respond. So even if the grants are 100% reimbursable, we still have to spend the money first, which means BOMA has to approve the expenditure. So for certain items, I mean, we should definitely have a mechanism to take them outside of the mid-year budget amendment. But maybe it's not wide open like it currently is.
Okay. Perfect.
So what criteria are you speaking? So I guess I'm a little confused on what changes are you looking to see made?
Let me say something Jesse's not saying, and probably won't say. Is when he got here, the aldermen and staff were accustomed to any expense that came up that sounded like a good idea was bringing it to the board.
Yeah.
I think we had the neighborhood of 40 budget amendments that started to be passed right at the beginning of July.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
didn't finish till the end of June. And that doesn't work well for some of the explanation he gave earlier. If we had some so he's just said that there should be an allowance for that to happen outside the mid-year budget amendment. I completely agree, and he gave a great example, but there might be some other examples. However, we don't want to leave the door wide open. Having said that, you're alderman, you can bring any legislation you want to at any time, but we just sort of like to sort of agree on some criteria of what makes sense to bring now and what makes sense to wait later.
I think it's a perfect idea. I do.
So criteria as in like, would there be a monetary amount where the budget would take effect? Or we're saying we need,
Or
to-
the-
if it'd be small, if they're small ticket items, we need to just wait till the budget, but if it's like an urgent item that's gonna cost $50,000 or more, is that
Right.
kind of what you're
Yes,
talking about?
yes,
sir.
yes.
Or maybe a percentage possibility there. So for $50,000 from HR, that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, $50,000 for police, not so much.
Right.
So maybe a percentage of a line item or a percentage of the whole department's budget.
Hmm.
As well as the possibility that's a number of figures as well. Is that, I mean, we've talked a little bit.
I think that's accurate
Yeah.
too. And see, the thing, as department heads, we should think ahead, plan for the year. And I mean, obviously things come up. But I remember watching a BOMA meeting where there was a 20 or 30-minute discussion over a $3,000 item that in the end, it got approved, but I thought, man, we wrote an ordinance and we've probably done 30 throughout the year like that. And if they all took that long, and it's city attorney time that's involved, it's staff
Big
time,
time suck. Yeah.
it's BOMA time, rather than wrapping them all together and looking at revenues at the same time, so you can make, probably a more informed decision. So I guess it's just in an effort to consolidate and make us as efficient as possible, but not restrict us to say, hey, yeah, if you have an opportunity to save $50,000 because something just came up or a grant, sure, go ahead and do it, but let's try and keep it tight. Let's think ahead and let's keep it as efficient as possible.
I mean, I'm all about efficiency.
I am
So-
too, and I was telling Mark before the meeting that had our mid-year review this was the second one we've done since we put it in place. But it does need some criteria around it, and this is what we're looking for. Some criteria around any budget amendment categorized, and it keeps
Well, it's
someone
rules on how
for
to
coming
play
in
the
here
game.
wanting $1 million purchase. So,
Sure.
Well,
They-
and have
they-
this criteria, not only that, it will help the staff to
Very much.
keep staffing levels.
Yep.
low, Right? I mean,
Yep.
because they're, you're not having to hire additional people to do all this additional work.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm all for that.
it's really cut out our time in Beaumont. It
Okay.
really has.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of the things that I came up with, time sensitive grants, right? Those should, at any time when they come in.
Absolutely.
When we have a project we've already committed to, and we would experience a delay in that project that would negatively affect the public. Or have a negative financial implications to the city. Like, for example, we're in a project and there's something that was left off the bid sheet.
Mhm.
And now the contractor is going to charge us his overhead to wait and sit till we come up with an answer. And if that takes us a month, because we have to go through, all the
Meetings, right.
processes.
Yeah.
Or we have to wait till the mid-year amendment and it would cost the city money. Well, then obviously, that there would be a reason why we'd go ahead and do a budget amendment. So I'll put a list together of, I think things that will be helpful. and make us more efficient. And please, if you have ideas to shoot them my way, and then we'll probably put something together
Great.
close to budget time to kind of talk about what those, kind of what that framework is for that program.
Great.
Very good. So give us an update on the finance director recruitment, please.
Yeah, so we are advertising on multiple platforms for the finance director. I think Jamie's famous quote is that he's been told several times, the hardest position to fill at a city in Tennessee is the finance director. Every day I'm beginning to believe that more and more. We did have a candidate we extended an offer to, and he asked to come in at the very top of the salary range. We couldn't commit to doing that. I think salary is going to be an issue with someone who's seeking to be a finance director. We haven't had any good candidates. We haven't had any candidates apply in the last 2 weeks. We've held 2 rounds of interviews. We've had some decent candidates.
This is
who've
a
interviewed.
nationwide search.
So it goes out on platforms that people see throughout the nation.
Okay, thank you.
We have not engaged a headhunter yet. Just for a couple of reasons. One is the cost of the headhunter would probably be just go ahead and let some person work at the very top of the range.
Right.
At the end of the day, and
And
then
they're gonna recruit for that anyways.
that's right. Exactly right. So the headhunter is going to go find someone who's going to be aggressive, want to be aggressive with salary. So it may be an option that we have to avail ourselves to. Right now Tamara has stepped in it, and she's the assistant finance director doing a really good job. And so from a body count perspective, we're the same as we were 3 months ago. Because we didn't have an assistant finance director. So when Tamara came in while Robert was here, we were actually up a body. So from a body count, we're doing okay. This is the best time of year because we are finished with mid-year. The CAFR's done. We don't have the new year for another month or 2 to worry about for budget.
Yeah.
So it's probably W-2s are done. So right now it's probably some of the slowest time that finance is going to have. But we haven't had a strong pool of candidates apply.
Well, even though it's the slowest time, it's also a good time to be bringing someone in to acclimate them to the city methods.
It is.
Yeah. I just want to say, thank God for Tamara.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Very true.
You're welcome.
I hear nothing but good things, so.
Thank you.
So anyway, that's just the reality of what's going on with the finance director recruitment. I think there's 5 platforms we're advertising on. A couple of them are nationwide. And if you're in the municipal finance world, you know what those platforms are. You will hop on them. They're memberships that people apply to. So
Great.
if you're looking for a finance job, you would know this one here. So
Yeah, I actually looked on GFOA today. There's 48 finance director positions posted on GFOA
Wow.
throughout the nation.
yeah.
So
How many in Tennessee? I'm curious. Did you notice?
one, and it's for a regional transit something. I don't
Okay.
remember what. It's not. I wanted
Not
it was.
around here?
It was in Nashville, I want to say.
Okay.
I did look on MTAS last week or the week before, and there are like 4 other finance director positions in Middle Tennessee. One is in, I want to say Pegram, and then Fairview. Chattanooga had one. There was one other one.
It was, and it's not specific to Tennessee.
Mhm.
It's across the nation. So the last finance director at the agency I was at, it was difficult to find someone as well too. And right now, I think the last JOLTS report showed that there's 1.9 positions open for every 1 person seeking a job. So basically a 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So it's not a good time for anyone, looking to find those
Hire
specialty
the right
positions.
person.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in a dead stop right now with that.
Yeah, we have an active recruitment going on. It's just, it
Yeah.
hasn't produced really good fruit.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So the investment policy update. Have we heard
what
back
about-
from?
What about
Salary.
7?
Oh, salary study. I'm so sorry.
Sure, no problem. Our municipal code dictates that every 5 years we go out and we get a salary study. And so the salary study, basically, a consultant comes in and looks at the pay grades that the city has and then does comparable studies at other agencies and cities that are in this area. So we did a competitive bid. We went out to RFP. We selected a consultant. We have not worked with this consultant before. The consultant we worked with in the past did not submit on this project. So we did background checks and the background checks came back very positive. And then Jason Gallo, our Administrative Services Director, negotiated the cost down some because we decided to take some of the work in-house to save money. So we brought the cost down a little bit. It's under what we currently budgeted. And so what they're doing right now is reviewing all of our job descriptions, and then they're comparing our job descriptions and pay grades to the other cities that are around us. I think we have 10, 11, or 12 cities and counties around us that we're going to compare our salaries to.
Okay.
However, in addition to that, I've asked our HR department to also look at the pension contributions
Mhm.
that we do compared to other cities, and the health care package that we provide compared to other cities, so that when we present the information to BOMA, it's not just one part of the compensation, but it's a fuller package that includes the pension contribution, the healthcare contribution, and the salary contribution. The city of Hendersonville does a non-contributory pension plan where the city contributes 100% of the pension. And then we have, we'll probably find we probably have the middle of the road benefits package as far as healthcare goes. But I want to put all that information together so when BOMA looks at it, you can see how the package looks as a whole and not just the salary. So probably another month or two before that gets wrapped up, and then we'll present that to BOMA.
And that won't include the new 401k that's being implemented, right? Or is that passed yet? I don't know.
No, it goes to BOMA. And so that
It's no
401k,
cost to us.
Yeah, no
yeah,
cost, that's right.
BOMA passes it, right? It's
Yeah.
no cost to the city, and it's probably a low, the fees on that are probably lower because it's state managed.
Mhm.
So it's a great benefit to employees or new folks who are coming here who have a 401k, and it doesn't cost us a dime. It's just nice.
But that won't be included in this because it's non-contributory by us.
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
Can I add something?
Sure.
So, I feel like the city of Hendersonville in terms of compensation should be at least at 75%. That we need to be better than 75% of the other cities, of the other comparable cities. I feel like to be lower than that we're not gonna get as high quality candidates we need. And more specifically, I want to make sure that we get really good people who want to be our police officers. And I say, when I speak to the officers and their families, during their badge pinning ceremony, is I know what it takes to be a police officer in Hendersonville. And I know that we have hired good people. I want that to be the case in every department, no doubt, but especially when it comes to police. I want to offer a compensation package that people we don't want to hire are going to apply for, but we're going to have the opportunity to choose some really good people.
I just, I 100% agree. I just want us to be really careful with that though, because I don't then want to see a tax increase come across the table. So that's really important to me. I know that's really important to a lot of citizens as well. So
I think we'll take all that into consideration.
yeah.
It's gonna be, we got some tough times probably ahead of us.
we
so-
do. It ebbs and flows.
But we gotta run the city with good people. So that's how I look at it. And to be transparent, I met with Jesse and Jason this morning on this very thing, and with Alderman Peterson, because he wanted to meet with the chair of the general and finance. So we had a really good discussion about retaining, this helping to retain. And I'm fully on board with looking at it as a total compensation for the role, how much we pay, your salary and your benefits, total compensation. So
Yeah.
it's very good.
So we have not hired this company yet. Is that correct?
We have,
We have hired them. Okay.
yes, sir.
Do they have a timeline when we're gonna be able to see the results of it?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. I think less than 2 months they're going to be completed.
Great. Great.
Anything else on that?
No, but, well, yes, actually,
Okay,
retention,
go ahead.
retention is key. It's much cheaper to retain a good employee than it is to find, hire, and train a new one. So I applaud your efforts of keeping staff. So go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. That's
That's
great.
I used to say 80%. I've modified that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Investment policy, is that what's next?
Yes, ma'am. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we have submitted to the state. We had to submit a plan to the state so they can approve it before we start investing our funds. So after BOMA approved it, we overnighted the mail the next day because every day it's costing us money not
Right.
to be in that investment
Right.
pool.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah, it is. So as soon as we hear word back, we are going to aggressively pursue getting our money into a fund as soon as possible. So
That's awesome.
we just an update, we overnighted the next day after BOMA approved. I think it's gonna take them a couple weeks to review it. We'll try to make it quicker than that, but then we'll drop funds. And in the meantime, what finance is doing is they're going through the process of identifying everything that's available for investment opportunities. So cash we're gonna have to have on hand, cash that's excluded from the policy. And they're gonna do like a daily reconciliation of bank statements on what our daily cash flow is, like what we have. And then, what we're gonna need for the week or the next 2 weeks, and try and put as much as we can into an investment pool so that we're leveraging everything that we can.
Awesome. Very good. Any questions on that?
I mean,
Nope,
Just keep
looking-
pushing them.
Looking forward to an update on that. one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So under other business, we're gonna talk about our debt analysis that you guys did a little work on for us.
Sure. So I think it's something
This may look a little bit different than the one that you had originally.
Okay.
We had made
Thank you.
some updates to it.
So as Alderman Sassy requested us to look into any, if it makes sense to pay off the debt, right? To analyze our debt and see if there's any possible savings from paying off our debt. And there may be. There are 4 notes right now that we have, and 2 of them are non-callable, meaning the only way we can really pay them off is if we put them in an escrow account, and it doesn't really save us any money. Because when we issued them as non-callable. So basically whoever bought those notes gets the guarantee that they're going to actually get that return. They can't be
Yeah.
sold, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the reason we probably got a premium on some of those issuances. Is because, it's favorable terms that those investors could hold those notes. So there's 2 that we can't refund. And then one of them that we can, there is a prepayment penalty. So the other note that we have that doesn't have a prepayment and that is callable is kind of at the break-even point. So what we did is we took the analysis of what our interest payments would be. And then we said, if we paid off, if we took that amount of money to pay off and we put it in an investment instead, and we figure that investment at a 3% return, and then we diminish that return down to 1.75 because the 3% is probably higher than average right now. I think the pool is earning 4%, but to be conservative, we started at 3%. And then we just dropped that. I think we did a quarter a year. We dropped it a quarter a year. So it ends up at like 1.75%, which that's a very huge assumption. I don't know where it's going to go, but we wanted to be conservative and just say, hey, if it trends downward,
right.
and we started a little bit lower than where it's at right now. So if we take that money and we invest it, which now we have a mechanism to invest it. If we didn't have an investment policy, it would probably make more sense to pay this debt off since we're not earning money on it. But now that we have an investment policy, at least from the analysis we ran, it makes sense to plug that money into the investment, let it earn money, and continue with our debt service analysis. And just to check on it. Now, if our earning rates drop, so if there's a substantial drop in the market, 3 months from now, it drops from us earning 3% to 0.5%, absolutely, we should revisit it and say, hey, at that point, are we going to save money by paying debt off? Because we made this assumption that we're going to have a certain rate of return. So if we're not hitting that rate of return, then I think it's something we should revisit to determine whether at that point it's worth paying off or not.
Yes.
Jesse, is it the 1.25 that's that we can pay off early? Or it can't be the 5.9 because we just,
Yeah, the 5.9.
oh, we can.
So, yeah,
but
the
the-
5
But
point,
yeah.
it has a prepayment penalty on it.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm trying to establish why the 2014 debt. Oh, okay, I didn't even look over there. I'm sorry. Why the 2014 2.4 didn't roll into our
Probably
Finance.
because it's so low and we're gonna be paying it off anyways,
is that it? Okay.
Probably because I think it retires.
Oh,
If I'm
yeah,
correct,
it
I
is
think that one
like-
retires
3 years.
next, yeah.
We're
Okay,
paying
got it.
100,000 a year on that one.
That's a low amount.
Okay, got it.
It's very low payment. Question, on the third one that's non-callable. Under prepayment penalty, it has a number there. So how could there be a prepayment penalty if it's non-callable?
I don't know.
No, that's how it was drafted. It has a 1% prepayment penalty if you pay it off. It's just favorable for the bank that way. So 1% of the remaining balance is you have to pay as a penalty if you pay it off early.
Wow.
So,
Even though you can't pay it off early.
Even though you
no,
can't,
no, the last one down.
No,
no,
the
the
last
third one, FY
It says
21.
360,000 for prepayment penalty.
Oh, that one. We got an analysis from Raymond James on that one because they helped us with that refinance and they said if we were to pay it off early, we would end up having a savings of maybe $42,000 because it's non-callable, but it would end up in escrow and I mean, it really wouldn't be a
Okay.
savings. It would probably
That's
end
the
up. co-
escrow option that we had.
Mhm.
So there is an option on the non-callables where you put those. I think you put those funds into an escrow, so those investors continue to get paid and you
Right.
make some money on it.
Mhm.
Which doesn't make any sense to do.
No.
It really doesn't.
Mm-mm.
Right. Well, we thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Good.
Tamara did. Oh, good. Thank you, Tamara.
We thank you,
She's got
Tamara.
all the information. So I think it's an important, obviously, topic to consider, and I think it's something we need to keep our eye on. Because if our assumed rate of return drops, then we probably need to revisit this
Yeah.
and consider paying the debt off.
very good.
Thank you. Any other business?
Can I mention one thing?
I'm sorry?
Can I mention one thing?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I talked about this, some of the other committees, I don't think I've said it here yet, and Karen understands this, but just want to let y'all know, the way the committee system works for this Board of Mayor and Alderman is that a committee cannot kill or prevent something from going to the board. Anybody can bring something to the board, and we have the requirement that go through a committee. So with that requirement also comes a responsibility that the committees recommend something be approved by the board or recommend it be denied by the board. Certainly, the committee can also just send it to the board and say, we don't really have a feeling one way or the other. So occasionally you may have heard from previous committee chairs about killing things in committees. That just didn't happen. And sometimes those committee chairs will get irritated that something go to the board regardless. Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. So if you don't want something to pass, then you need to put a negative recommendation on it. You can't kill it here and say it shouldn't go to the board. And with the general committee, it's a little bit more extreme than that. There are some items that go to the general committee that are required by state law to go to the board. Otherwise, they're assumed to be passed. And those are rezonings.
Okay.
So, but y'all don't have to do that. So just want to sort of give you an idea of maybe some people had it, maybe some chairmen have a different perspective of the committees before.
Hmm. I,
Yes,
maybe so.
yes. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, clarity.
And anything else? Anybody got anything else to bring to the table?
No,
Thank you so much, Jesse and Tamara.
yes, thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Can I get a motion to adjourn?